My fellow Americans,
whatever our hopes may be for the future, for reducing this threat or living with it, there is no escaping either the gravity or the totality of its challenge to our survival and to our security. A challenge that confronts us in unaccustomed ways in every sphere of human activity. This deadly challenge imposes upon our society two requirements of direct concern, both to the press and to the President. Two requirements that may seem almost contradictory in tone, but which must be reconciled and fulfilled if we are to meet this national peril. I refer first to the need for far greater public information, and second, to the need for far greater official secrecy. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
A functioning democracy? Well, let's have a look at it. It costs $2 billion to become president. They have 25% of the total prisoners in the world. They spend over $800 billion a year on arms, which is more than most of the world put together. They've been at war for 250 years since their state was formed 275 years ago. But they can't afford universal health care. They can't afford the 1.7 trillion debt forgiveness for students. They can't afford a programme for the 17 million children that go to bed hungry. Is this a functioning democracy? What's your idea of a democracy?
Know this this is a bit of an aside, but in terms of how you think about problem sets, when I was a cadet, what's the cadet motto at West Point? You will not lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate those who do. I was the CI director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like we had entire training courses.
it would have been more appropriate for Mr. Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, to address this House according to Article 144, an article which was specifically designed to debate violations of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law, which is clearly the case with Mr. Trudeau. Then again, a Prime Minister who openly admires the Chinese basic dictatorship, who tramples on fundamental rights by persecuting and criminalizing his own citizens as terrorists just because they dared to stand up to his perverted concept of democracy, should not be allowed to speak in this House at all. Mr. Trudeau, you are a disgrace for any democracy. Please spare us your presence. Thank you.
become involved when disinformation poses a threat to the security of our country. It is when there's a connectivity to a threat to our country. It could be a threat, a connectivity to violence. And what this working group does, is precisely what I would think you would want it to do, which is to take a look at the work, the disinformation work that our department has done and ask the following questions. Do we have policies? Do we have guardrails? Do we have standards?
But here's the problem. We can't even agree. We can't even agree what disinformation is. You can't even agree that it was disinformation, that the Russians fed information to the Steele dossier. If you can't agree to that, how are we ever going to come to an agreement on what is disinformation so you can police it on social media?
Senator, I have 2 points, if I may finish. Number one, that what this office, what this working group does, because it's not an office, what this working group does is ensure that there are guardrails, definitions, standards to make sure that the free speech rights, the civil rights, civil liberties, and privacy rights of individuals.
So do you think COVID disinformation threatens our national security?
And number two, if I may, Senator, and number two, is it your proposition that when the cartels spread disinformation with respect to our immigration policies to try to lure vulnerable migrants to our border illegally?
I think you've got no idea what disinformation is, and I don't think the government's capable of it. Do you know who the greatest propagator of disinformation in the history of the world is? The U.S. government. Are you familiar with McNamara, the Pentagon Papers? Are you familiar with George W. Bush and the weapons of mass destruction? Are you familiar with Iran-Contra? I mean, think of all the debates and disputes we've had over the last 50 years in our country. We work them out by debating them. We don't work them out by the government being the arbiter. I don't want you to guardrails. I want you to have nothing to do with speech. You think we can't determine, speech by traffickers is disinformation? You think the American people are so stupid they need you to tell them what the truth is? You can't even admit what the truth is with the Steele dossier. I don't trust government to figure out what the truth is. Government is largely disseminating disinformation.
Rationality belongs to the cool observers, but because of the stupidity of the average man, he follows not reason but faith, and the naive faith of the proletarian requires necessary illusion and emotionally potent oversimplifications, which have to be provided by myth makers to keep the ordinary person on the right course.
Colleagues, but the answer to war is not more war, it's peace. And peace isn't delivered by the barrel of a gun, it's delivered by diplomacy, by dialogue. You can wish away your continent's history, but we share a continent with Russia. We will sit down with Russia. There will be a negotiated peace, and this organisation should be promoting it earlier rather than delaying it and making sure that more Ukrainians die. Your feigning of sympathy rings hollow. It makes me sick, to be honest with you.
We had a good discussion on ensuring global energy security and adequate oil supplies to support global economic growth, and that will begin shortly. I'm doing all I can to increase the supply for the United States of America, which I expect to happen. The Saudis share that urgency, and based on our discussions today, I expect we'll see further steps in the coming weeks.
Are you worried about
Well, one of the four principal functions of the CIA is to gather intelligence and ideally forward it to the president, the users of information, the policymakers, as they say. There are other functions, however, some of them more legitimate than others. One is to run secret wars, the covert action that's written and talked about so much, like what's happening in Nicaragua today from Honduras. Another thing is to disseminate propaganda to influence people's minds, and this is a major function of the CIA. And unfortunately, of course, it overlaps into the gathering of information. You have contact with a journalist You will give him true stories, you'll get information from him, you'll also give him false stories. For example, in my war, the Angola war that I helped to manage, 1/3 of my staff was propaganda. Ironically, it's called covert action inside the CIA. Outside, that means the violent part. I had propagandists all over the world, principally in London, Kinshasa, and Zambia. We would take stories which we would write and put them in the Zambia Time, and then pull them out and send them to a journalist on our payroll in Europe. But his cover story, you see, would be that he'd gotten them from his stringer in Lusaka, who had gotten them from the Zambia Time. We had the complicity of the government of Zambia, Kenneth Kaunda, if you will, to put these false stories into his newspapers. But after that point, the journalists at Reuters and AFP, the management was not witting of it. Now, our contact man in Europe was, and we pumped just dozens of stories about Cuban atrocities, Cuban rapists. In one case, we had the Cuban rapists caught and tried by the Ovimbundu maidens who had been their victims, and then we ran photographs that made almost every newspaper in the country of the Cubans being executed by the Ovimbundu women who supposedly had been their victims.
These were fake photos?
Oh, absolutely. We didn't know of one single atrocity committed by the Cubans. It was pure, raw, false propaganda to create an illusion of communists, eating babies for breakfast and that sort of totally false propaganda.
I can no longer remain in today's Democratic Party that's under the complete control of an elitist cabal of warmongers who are driven by cowardly wokeness, who divide us by racializing every issue and stoking anti-white racism, who actively work to undermine our God-given freedoms that are enshrined in our Constitution, who are hostile to people of faith and spirituality, who demonize the police but protect criminals at the expense of law-abiding Americans, who believe in open borders, who weaponize the national security state to go after their political opponents, and above all, who are dragging us ever closer to nuclear war. Now, I believe in a government that's of the people, by the people, and for the people. Unfortunately, today's Democratic Party does not. Instead, it stands for a government that is of, by, and for the powerful elite. Now, I'm calling on my fellow common sense, independent-minded Democrats to join me in leaving the Democratic Party. If you can no longer stomach the direction that the so-called woke Democratic Party ideologues are taking our country, then I invite you to join me.
Welcome, everybody, to Redacted on this Monday. I'm Clayton Morris.
I'm Natali Morris.
Welcome into the holiday edition of the Redacted program. I hope you are a subscriber to the channel. We've got a lot of news to get to on this show. Our goal is to seek the truth wherever it leads us. We cover the stories the mainstream media largely ignores. And just looking at our rundown of stories today, there's a lot of stories that where people are saying, why is the media not covering this story, this story, this story? I mean, we're going to look at the border crisis. There's like very little coverage of this in the mainstream media on the border, which is about to explode in the next 24 hours if the Biden administration doesn't extend Title 42, but it's gone largely hidden, quiet from the mainstream media.
And the Twitter files, which continue to show us how the United States government and the Justice Department are actively involved in censoring speech and trying to gain a certain political outcome and manipulate that however they can. We're going to break it down. I think the formation of this social media group inside the FBI is the most shocking bit of this, and we're going to show you all of this. And I'm just so taken by the response on Twitter to people saying, who cares, who cares, who cares? And I'm like,
what?
Why do you not care that your government is censoring citizens and trying to affect an outcome? Is it just because you like the outcome of the most recent election?
That's exactly what it is.
That's wrong, and that will come back to bite us all. We all should hate this.
Yes.
I don't want to tell you how to feel, but that's not it. Who cares? It's not it.
I'm going to tell you how to feel.
I'm going to tell you how to not feel. Don't feel like who cares. Although who would tune into a show like this if they didn't care?
Right. No, I mean,
you're self-selected into caring.
You guys are the tip of the spear, right? And welcome to the rebellion. You guys are the redacted rebels. Like, this is the point. Like, if we, share this show out, just smash that like button, share it to other people. Text this show to a friend of yours, somebody who is still kind of in that world and sucked into like the CNN kind of world. It's really, really troubling. We should all be upset about that. We're also going to look at a bombshell FDA study out now on Pfizer. And welcome to the party, pal. Like, it took you long enough, but now and this is not a small study of what adverse effects we're seeing from Pfizer's shot. Holy smokes. I mean, this is millions of people that they studied and looked at. So we're going to break all of that down. All of that and more as Redacted starts right now. Cold Water in our chat says, who cares equals government bot. Exactly. If someone's like, who cares? Who cares? It's just like a government bot or something, like, yeah, of course you should care. Like, you're literally watching a country collapse in front of your eyes right now. I mean, not only at the border, but internally, you have a deep state and these deep state globalists that are running the entire show in Washington. All of Washington's power center is basically in Silicon Valley. So, maybe we'll get somewhere. Maybe we will get these investigations that Congress is now going to be calling for. We'll see. We'll see if it actually comes together.
Speaking of Trump, there was news that broke just before we went to air about the January 7th committee. Yes.
January 6th committee. The January 7th committee.
That is what it is in Bizarro world.
That's the day after the January
14th.
Yeah. December 8th, a day that will live in infamy.
Okay.
What happened then? It's the day after Pearl Harbor.
All right, you tell the news.
No, I don't know. I'm just telling you it's January 6th committee.
Okay, they have recommended a criminal investigation to the Department of Justice. Again, that is more of a gesture. They say, based on what we've found, we think there should be criminal investigation for these things with possible criminal charges. That's interesting, and we've been following what they've been showing us. We don't have a full piece on it tonight because we will continue to break this down. But it is kind of showing us that congressional committees don't have a lot of power other than showing you what Congress investigates and then making recommendations. They don't really punish anybody. They're just saying, and we already knew that they thought that Trump should be punished. So it's maybe or not big news. We're going to dive into that most likely tomorrow.
Yeah, we will. And we'll have a full breakdown on it in the morning newsletter, which is a great thing that you should all subscribe to because, again, it's the best newsletter in the world and it's totally free. And you can read it in about 10 minutes over your cup of coffee first thing in the morning, depending on where you are in the world. We have Australian viewers that read it at nighttime. But hey, if you're in the United States, our goal is to get it out to you by about 6:30 in the morning in your email inbox. So all you need to do to get the newsletter is go to redacted.inc, not .com. It's redacted.inc. Put in your email address and then you'll receive a welcome email. You have to verify it. Please, look in your spam folder, look in your promotions folder, whatever Gmail divides it up, and click on verify that, yes, you do want to receive the email tomorrow morning. And then first thing in the morning, you'll get this email. And again, you can read it in about 5 to 10 minutes. And we will have this January 6th coverage as this unfolds throughout the night. So we'll have coverage in the newsletter tomorrow morning. But please subscribe. It's a great, great newsletter.
But I think
Can I ask one question about it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I mean, we don't have a lot of answers, but sure.
Yeah. So basically, the whole thing was predicated on Trump's tweet because they said he incited violence and then he was deleted. And I think that's isn't that pretty much their main case? But then they proved that wasn't inciting violence because they showed the tweets and Twitter admitted that it wasn't really calling for violence. Doesn't their whole case fall apart with the Twitter files?
That's an interesting question. Because if Twitter didn't even call it a violation of the terms of service, then I'm not exactly sure. Again, I think that what's interesting to me is the juxtaposition of what people care about based on their own biases. So the people that I see commenting online that are sort of blue liberal check marks, who are, I don't care at all about, the FBI and Twitter, don't care at all. Trump being recommended for criminal charges. I care a lot about this. These things go hand in hand. You can't have it both ways. You have to care about them holistically. And I think a lot of people are sort of gleefully sharing this based on their own conviction bias. We don't have that. We're just reading and trying to figure out what actually is happening. And we appreciate your take on it as well.
Yeah. So again, January 6th grand finale, criminal referrals, says Drudge Report.
Again, a referral is, it doesn't hold a ton of teeth. It doesn't mean the Justice Department has not already considered this. It's not at all like the FBI is like, oh, brand new idea.
Right.
Hadn't thought of that.
It just allows them to set a narrative. That's all it does. It's just allowing them to make the Democrats freak out. Now they're all tweeting it and saying, he's going to jail. It's finally happening.
Yeah.
It's planned.
Instead of covering some of the, really important stories of our time right now.
Yes.
We are literally about to see a massive offensive in Ukraine. As New York Times reporting this afternoon, Russia looks ready that they're about to pull the trigger on this massive offensive. We got the U.S. border crisis. We have the FBI literally inside of social media networks, driving and censoring Americans and swaying elections, basically.
And king-making, basically. This is king-making. It's crazy because what we're going to show you later are tweets that from the Twitter files that show that the committee that decided to start censoring social media was developed because of the 2016 election.
Yeah.
And so they basically decided that's not the king we chose. that wasn't supposed to happen. Let's get in there and start greasing the wheels and deciding that the bits and bobs work the way we want them to. That is, again, they worked against an elected leader, whether you like that person or not. They decided to work in favor of another elected leader. What are they doing now? You can't not care about that.
Yeah. Well, we've got a lot of news to get to on the show tonight. And so let's start with the border crisis. So in a little over 24 hours from now, the White House will get its wish, which is to remake the United States of America by letting millions of illegal immigrants into the United States, giving them a pathway to citizenship. Title 42 expires at midnight tomorrow night. There are no plans right now to extend it, none. And they're not doing anything about it. And this morning we learned, this is an amazing piece of this story. This morning we learned that the Department of Homeland Security and ICE have been hiding and suppressing data, hiding the real numbers of illegal immigrants coming across the border who are then detained, arrested by ICE agents. Look at this. So according to the numbers, ICE's hidden numbers, they misreported their total. And they misreported it by 18,000%. That's not just a rounding error. 18,000%.
Why do you think they would be motivated to do this?
Good question. Oh, and let me just point out the ankle monitors. Also, after they're arrested and then they're released and monitored, they miscounted or downplayed the number by 600%. And so now Republicans are like, what the heck? Like, hey, Mayorkas, what the hell? What are you doing suppressing this data? So according to the numbers obtained by journalists at the Daily Caller, ICE was underreporting the number of illegal immigrants into the country with no form of electronic tracking by more than 18,000%, and was misreporting that number of illegal immigrants released out with those ankle bracelets by nearly 600%. Now, they've apologized.
Okay, so when
what
you
was
say that,
Philip going to say?
Are they saying...
Okay.
Are they saying there were 18,000% more or less? Like, which way does the number go?
Underreported. So that means there's so many more illegal immigrants that ICE detained and released that they did not report in this data. So now they said it was a mistake. ICE came out and apologized.
Sorry, I was just going to. Sorry. I was just going to point out the math on that real quick. That would the underreporting that would mean for every 18,000 people that crossed, we called it one. Just to put that into perspective.
Okay.
Wow. That's all right. Those 18,000. I'm going to put you down for a 1 here.
That's 1 18,000, 2 18,000, 3 18,000.
My God. So now they've apologized. ICE came out and apologized, said it was a mistake, said the data was a mistake. They say nothing nefarious to see here. So the numbers are way worse than they're telling us, but all hell is about to break loose. Texas Governor Greg Abbott says if Title 42 isn't extended, it will be chaos at the border. Listen.
One of the Republican governors fighting to keep Title 42 in place. That Trump policy implemented at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, which allows the U.S. government to immediately expel most migrants as a public health risk. Since March of 2020, it's been used nearly 2.5 million times. What do you think happens next week when Title 42 comes to an end?
If the courts do not intervene and put a halt to the removal of Title 42, it's going to be total chaos.
But how do you keep that in place? That is about COVID. That is about public health risk.
Whether it's COVID or some other issue, when you have people coming across the globe without knowing at all what their health status is, that almost by definition is a public health risk. There's every reason to keep that in place.
So that's the real rub here, right? It's a Trump era COVID policy that's being used in this situation, right, to round up people and immediately send them back because of pandemic and COVID. So there, Martha Raddatz is sitting there saying, well, how do you continue to push this if if COVID is gone, basically? But the White House is still telling us it's present. They're pushing booster shots. And we're still in a pandemic. You should be masking. That literally comes from the COVID czar at the White House, Dr. Ashish Jha, this weekend. So it still exists. According to the White House, it's still there. They're pushing boosters and for kids and everything else and elderly people. And they want you to go get multiple boosters, get one, every few months now.
I mean, but how did these people think this people in cages problem just went away?
Right.
Just because of a natural media cycle?
Yeah, I guess. I think they're like, oh, if we don't talk about it, then it's not really an issue. If we don't,
that was awful. I mean, Trump did it. Was terrible.
Obama had cages, and no one ever covered that. You're not allowed to, but when it's Trump, then of course would they cover it, and they talk about how Trump's border wall is not here, and there's people
Okay, but the conditions that precipitated the people in cages only were stalled during the pandemic. The conditions will return, and so this is a logical conclusion.
And in a massive way. I mean, talk about 18,000 people pouring across the border in the next 24 hours. I mean, and think about it. These protections are already in place right now, and this is how bad it is. Imagine when they pull the governor off of it, and it's just wide open. So the Biden administration was happy to lean on Title 42 as an excuse for months now to expel illegal immigrants. Remember when DHA, Department of Homeland Security, DHS Secretary Mayorkas told us that the border is secure? Watch.
Message is quite clear. Do not come. The border is closed. The border is secure. We are expelling families. We are expelling single adults under the CDC's authority, under Title 42 of the United States Code, because we are in the midst of a pandemic.
So last night, the mayor of El Paso, Texas, declared a state of emergency. Mayor Oscar Lesser declared this state of emergency. So I don't know, I'll ask a question. Why hasn't the Biden administration done it? But here is Mayor Oscar Lesser declaring this emergency. Watch.
What's the best way of continuing to make sure that everyone's safe? And as we see the increase in asylum seekers into our community, and we see the temperatures dropping, and we know that Title 42 looks like it's going to be called back on Wednesday, we felt there was proper time today to call a state of emergency.
So state of emergency. So the question is, why hasn't the Biden administration declared a state of emergency, put in National Guard troops, done it himself, because it always has been the plan from Democrats to remake this country, to have a nonstop wave of immigrants. Here is President Biden, then Senator Biden. Actually, no, he was vice president at the time. So this was Vice President Biden at the time in 2015, admitting that their goal is a nonstop wave of immigration. They want a nonstop wave of immigration coming into the United States. This is Democrat Vice President Joe Biden. Notice the man sitting to his right side during this speech. Watch.
An unrelenting stream of immigration. Non-stop. Folks like me who were Caucasian of European descent, for the first time in 2017, will be in an absolute minority in the United States of America. Absolute minority. Fewer than 50% of the people in America from then and on will be white European stock. That's not a bad thing. That's a source of our strength.
In fact, I interviewed the president when he was the vice president about immigration. And it was a whole program that the White House sponsored with Microsoft and Skype in order to promote open borders.
Right.
And it was, it was a corporate sponsored event for the vice president at the time to talk about how he thinks that immigration is the soul of America, which in many ways is true. But that doesn't mean an influx of
illegal
of people without resources, when the people who live here at this moment can't afford basic necessities due to global sanctions.
So the Department of Homeland Security will not let the media go and cover. Another reason why it's so quiet is because the Department of Homeland Security won't let cameras in. So to see what's actually happening at these border facilities, like how overrun are they? How many people are there? Why can't we get some transparency on this issue? So the only way to get video is through leaks. And if someone sneaks video out of there, they take your phone when you go in there. So it's very difficult unless you're a sitting member of Congress going there. So if you're a member of Congress, you can actually take some video. And that's actually what happened. Congressman Tony Gonzalez went to one of these facilities and at the Texas border and processing centers. And what he gathered on camera was unbelievable. This is from a congressman. Look at this. This is only supposed to hold about 1,000 people. There's close to 5,000 in this one center, sleeping on floors with like those aluminum foil blankets, like the things you give to people after they run a marathon.
Yeah,
like,
or get hurt.
These kids like sleeping on these mats, like.
Cassandra Elin Alvarado Guzmán, Stephanie y Maria Alvarado Tino.
Jeez. This is, yeah, unbelievable. So Texas Governor Greg Abbott has deployed the National Guard. This is another major piece of the story. 5,000 soldiers to the border to fight the flood of illegal immigrants. But the number keeps growing, of course, that are coming across the border, and it's about to explode. Listen.
They are arriving in record-breaking numbers, 2 million this year. Masses of migrants, families, children clinging to their mothers, forging rivers with little but the clothes on their backs. Roughly 2,500 migrants have crossed into El Paso every day this week, pushing the state to the brink. And that's before Title 42 is set to expire, when the Department of Homeland Security predicts the numbers along the southern border will swell to 18,000 a day.
18,000 a day.
So then what?
But this is the plan, right? The plan is millions of new people living in the United States, that they'll try to give them a pathway to citizenship. This will completely alter the United States. It will ultimately, of course, well, they think it will help Democrats, right? They'll be able to remake these states. They think that by allowing them sanctuary.
Especially because Latins are increasingly voting Republican as they start to see how Democratic policies hurt them.
It is amazing, right? They think that that's going to help, right? They're going to bring these people in, and then they're going to vote for Democrats.
As if they don't, as if they can't, understand nuance.
But the last few election cycles, they've
seen increasing numbers of minorities voting Republican because Democratic policies are, they're promoting, in my opinion, crime and perversion and all kinds of things that are like literally hurting the poorest among us, and climate policies that harm poor people. And I do think that there's a changing of the tide. I'm not saying Republican strategies are all that much better, but I do think that this sort of hedging of the bets that minority races will vote Democratic may not hold forever.
So they're trying to build this wall. Abbott announced $1 billion for the continuation of the building of the wall. Right now, they're having to use these like shipping containers. You can see here, these are new shipping containers that they're having to put up as temporary walls to try to keep people out. I mean, so this is all along there. They're like, oh, well, we got some. That's beautiful. Put up some ugly ass shipping containers. I mean, that's what they're doing. That's how this is an emergency right now. Listen though to how the left-wing media tries to blame the border crisis on Trump and Texas Governor Greg Abbott for calling attention to the fact. So they have been saying our borders are open. It's wide open. People just walk across. And listen to the left-wing media basically blame them for saying that, like saying the truth out loud. Like what you're doing by calling attention to this is inviting people across the border. This is laughable. Watch.
You talk about the border wall, you talk about open borders. I don't think I've ever heard President Biden say, we have an open border, come on over. But people I have heard say it are you, are former President Trump, or Ron DeSantis. That message reverberates in Mexico and beyond. So they do get the message that it is an open border, and smugglers use all those kinds of statements.
Wait. So their sarcasm is what's forcing poor, impoverished people?
Yeah. So it's Greg Abbott's fault for calling attention to the fact that our borders are porous and open. Isn't that the biggest crock of shit
The way
you've heard?
Trump says, like, hey, we're open. Because we haven't built a wall, it's our fault. So it's open season. And so then these people who have no way to feed their baby think, great idea.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
That's the equivalent. That's the equivalent of like you punching me in the face and me saying, "Hey, you punched me in the face," and you going, "You're promoting violence."
Yeah, you just said it.
No.
You're promoting violence. No, you hit me. So Greg Abbott says, look, they've bussed now 14,000 migrants to sanctuary cities over the past few days. They've been sending them to 8,000 of them to Washington, D.C., 4,000 to New York City, 1,300 to Chicago, 300 just arrived in Philadelphia overnight. And they're going to continue to do that. He's saying we're sending them to sanctuary states, sanctuary cities that claim that they have the resources to handle anything with immigrants. Great. We'll send them to you because we don't. And then, there's still the question is like, well, when is President Biden going to go down there? When is President Biden? He still has not been to the border. And yet Jean-Pierre, White House press secretary, just lied right to our faces and said that, well, he doesn't need to go because he's already been there. He's been to the border. Listen.
He's been there. He's been to the border. And since he took office.
When did he go to the border?
Since he took office, the President Biden has been taking action to fix our immigration system and secure our border.
Yeah. Somebody yells out,
Arizona.
When did he go to the border? I'm just going to skip that. I'm going right past that question.
She just means in spirit.
In spirit, or he was like 300 miles away.
Not spending the Arizona trip, he was this close to the border. What are you talking about? Like he was like miles from it.
Yeah,
just like a week ago.
Well, maybe run to the border is a very old Taco Bell slogan.
Mm-hmm. Run for the border.
Right. So maybe he's done that.
Maybe he went to Taco Bell. Yeah. And he's like, he got one of those bean burritos.
That's it. He ran for the border.
So Mayorkas did the same thing, though. He went to the border, the Department of Homeland Security head. So he, over the weekend, was down there, and he's getting slammed for it because he got a really icy reception from ICE. He went down to the border. Instead of talking about the immigration crisis, instead he gave a speech and talked about suicide prevention among the rank and file border agents because they're basically like, they have no life, like they're lifeless. That's the description of them. They're like, right now, they're like, we literally can't get anything accomplished, and it's leading to suicide. So that's what he was there to talk about.
But actually, that's been the case since the Obama administration. There was a actually really well done 60 Minutes piece during the Obama years about how the people on the border, they went and said, why does Trump say these things about build a wall on the campaign trail? And even they proved that Obama had not improved border conditions even a little bit. And these Border Patrol agents were super depressed and dispirited because they couldn't do anything to make it stop. So that's a valid point, if not the point.
Yeah. But he continues to say that, the border is secure. So, and he actually got some pushback from some of the border agents because he has been saying, no, the border is secure. We're secure. We don't have an open border. It's secure. And they're like, oh, what are you talking about? You're undermining our job. Here's what he said about the border. Listen.
Is the border safe? Now I was watching a news channel and they were talking about an invasion was happening and I got a little concerned.
Look, the border is secure. The border, we are working to make the border more secure.
Thanks, Andy.
Is the border?
So it's secure, but we're making it more secure. It's not secure at all. Clearly. So when he was there meeting with these border agents, according to the Washington Examiner, he focused his comments on smaller groups of management and rank and file agents and officers on suicide prevention, which those familiar with the discussion said fell on deaf ears. When he stated he was here to bring light to suicide prevention and nothing about the migrant crisis, our staff couldn't believe it and made it known to him, a senior border agent in El Paso told the Washington Examiner. This is why Chip Reed, among other Republicans right now, are calling for an impeachment of Mayorkas. Listen.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks for putting this together, and thanks for all these great patriots for being here. And Mark Morgan, my good friend, who was head of Border Patrol under President Trump, he knows how to secure the border. We all know how to secure the border. We put out a plan last week, the Texas delegation, the entire delegation standing right here. We know what to do, and that's why we're here right now about Mayorkas. He knows what to do, but yet he's literally refusing to do it, purposefully. With all due respect to my colleagues, this isn't about somebody who is just not getting his job done. This is about a guy who is purposefully endangering the American people and migrants who seek to come here. And he's doing so for crass political purposes, using them as pawns, nothing more.
So Joe Manchin was asked about this. Joe Manchin, a Democrat maybe in name only, I don't know, was asked about the border, was asked about Mayorkas. What are Democrats going to do about this? And it's, this big impeachment move to try to get Mayorkas thrown out of here. And Joe Manchin said, that's just crazy talk. Like he's doing a great job. He's doing a great job. Listen to this.
How do you get to bipartisan legislation on legal migration when you are about to face a Republican-controlled House that's vowed to impeach the Homeland Security Secretary?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's an unfair charge against Ali Mayorkas. I think the gentleman is very competent. He can do a good job. They just need to unleash him, let him do his job.
They need to unleash him and let him do his job. They need to just give him, what does that even mean? They need to unleash him.
Wait, isn't that, if he's unleashed, won't he then follow through with the disinformation, misinformation thing he was going to be part of?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, if unleashed, with him being leashed, he's managed to do incredible damage, right? We know the relationship with DHS and Twitter. We're going to talk about the Twitter files in a little bit.
Oh, yes. Well, maybe he's really busy securing the border with Russia.
Maybe. Well, that is the border that we're focused on. It's the
right.
It's
which
it's
I
the
know
Ukrainian
my geography
border.
And
nowhere near.
That doesn't work out. It doesn't check out. Even Twitter said that doesn't check out.
Yeah. So let us know your thoughts on this. We're going to be watching this over the next 24 hours. It expires on the 21st at midnight on Title 42. And again, this is all part of their plan. Millions of people coming into the United States. Already upwards of I think upwards of like 4 million and counting. So the goal, as Laura Logan reported last week, is over 100 million. 100 to 200 million new people coming into the United States to totally alter the United States landscape and North America in general. So there you go. Get your wish, globalists.
I mean, yes, both parties should absolutely be asked about this. To be asked to, ring in on this, not just say, well, we're welcoming people. We don't see it like AOC. I don't see limitations when it comes to people, right? That was what she said. I don't, she said something like, we don't have lack mentality, when migrants come in. But then what? Then we have to account for dollars and cents, blankets and food, water bottles, that kind of thing.
Yeah, actually, and housing. We have a housing crisis in the United States as it is.
That video that I shared from you from Robert Welch, somebody shared it with me on Twitter from 1958, where it basically lays out exactly what the Democrats are doing right now with inflation and all that stuff.
No, I missed that.
From 1958. Oh my gosh, it's like if you took what he said and laid it on top of what we're going through right now. It's like the blueprint.
Okay, I'll circle back.
And and inflation's about to get a whole lot worse because now with this massive omnibus bill that just passed, I mean, they're just printing money they don't have. And it's just going, I mean, you're literally watching a country in collapse right in front of your faces. And it's really, really sad to watch. It's really sad. We've got more news we're going to get to. We're going to talk about this Congress calling now for an investigation into the FBI and big tech and the collusion between the two of them, because we just got our new batch of Twitter files just a few minutes ago. We'll bring you up to date on that. Plus, the FDA drops a bombshell about Pfizer, a huge study. Where is the mainstream media coverage of this story? Nowhere. In fact, they're still pushing booster shots. Like, what? What the hell is happening? We'll get to that. But first, did you guys know that identity theft is the fastest growing crime in America? There's a new victim every 14 seconds. And that's why I'm excited to partner with today's sponsor, Aura. Now, last year we had our entire Facebook account taken over by hackers. I think they were in Vietnam. And we couldn't get into our account. They were posting all kinds of random stuff. We had to go through all kinds of hoops and hurdles. It took us like 2 months to get it undone, packaged up, get back with. It was awful for our business account. It was really awful. But we would have known about it. We would have been protected if we had Aura, because we would have gotten alerts about it, and it could have been protected and taken care of. But we didn't have Aura at the time, so now we do. You might have one of these services already, like a VPN, a password manager, an antivirus software. But that's where Aura comes in. It's all combined into one app. They handle everything. If you don't have all the tools, it's like locking the front door but leaving the back door wide open. You've got to have all of these things. So those who've had their identity stolen are often shocked when it happens. How many of you in the chat right now watching have had your identity stolen or had some sort of a hack happen on your computer or a loved one? Tell us in the chat if that's happened to you. Imagine trying to log in your email account one day only to see the password has changed, and hours ago, and then you start getting notifications of activity from your bank, credit cards, crypto accounts, etc. And the dark web, they sell these passwords. I got an alert that, hey, one of my passwords was on the dark web. You might want to change that password because it was found in a data breach and it was sold. I was like, oh, great. That's good to know. So Aura gives you near real-time alerts on suspicious credit inquiries, like if someone was opening a loan or a credit card in your name. Protect your family and yourself from identity theft. Go to aura.com/redacted. Right there on your screen, that's the link. You have to use that and you'll get a 2-week free trial. Like, just try it out and test out some of the alerts. In that 2-week free trial, you'll even see the stuff they found on the dark web. Like, they'll give you those, see these things, these login credentials were found on the dark web, and they'll send you these alerts. It's crazy how well this works. So even if you don't continue your membership beyond 2 weeks, try it for 2 weeks for free on us. They're also going to give you a 2-week free trial with my link so you can see for yourself how many times Aura finds you or your family members' personal info on the dark web. And if you sign up, let me know in the comments if you or your personal information has been compromised. You won't regret checking it for free. Go to aura.com/redacted. Again, that's aura.com/redacted to take advantage of these free 2 weeks so you can find out, get yourself secure in all of that. So our thanks to them. And our thanks to all of you for subscribing. If you do subscribe up here on a big Christmas board, your name will pop up here on Rumble or on YouTube. So please subscribe. Hit that little plus button over on Rumble as well. And also smash that like button. It pushes us further out into the algorithm and really helps us to reach new people.
Indeed. All right. We're going to talk about Twitter and how congressional representatives are calling for investigations of big tech's collusion with the deep state, and it's really happening along party lines. This is a story that everybody really should care about because we're seeing now a social media company being influenced by government actors, many of them unelected, and we can be pretty sure that this is happening, being mirrored and matched across every social platform. We haven't heard boo from Facebook or YouTube about how and when and exactly who is doing this inside of their platforms, but we would be ignorant to believe that it is not.
Well, also, we did see that there was a couple of independent reports. We haven't verified it yet, but where they've identified dozens upon dozens of people who worked at the FBI, the CIA, formerly had it in their bios on LinkedIn, who are currently working at Facebook.
Yeah.
Former CIA, former FBI, who are now working at Facebook.
Well, in the most recent document dumps for Twitter, actually, there's a long list of FBI employees that worked for Twitter. And in fact, many of the times when FBI agents were corresponding with executives at Twitter and they said, oh, who there might have security clearance? They said, Jim Baker happens to work here. And even though the FBI agent and Jim Baker were colleagues, he's like, oh, forgot about him. Like, this really strange behavior. And there is a long list of names of Twitter executives that had FBI experience that had just recently made that little hop.
So on Sunday, we saw Congressman Mike Turner, who sits now on the House Intelligence Committee. He's now going to be the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee when they take power in January. He's calling for an investigation into big tech's collusion with the deep state. Here's what he said to Maria Bartiromo. Watch.
You're going to be the chairman of the Intelligence Committee, and you will have oversight of these agencies. What is your priority, and how will you use subpoena power?
Well, our committee became aware of these activities earlier this year, and I want to thank Elon Musk for bringing forward the information that he had, because while we pursue the intelligence community to try to hold them accountable, while we're doing that, Elon Musk is showing what's happening on the other side with the willing partners, the mainstream media, social media, and really exposing the coordination that was occurring between the FBI and them. Now, it is my understanding from our contacts that we've had with the FBI that there are secret files that the FBI has of these contacts that they were having with social media and with mainstream media. And it has been our objective to get a hold of those files, to see the extent of this so we can stop it, we can cut off the funding and prevent, obviously, average Americans being impacted by FBI actions.
So the question today is, and there's been, you see defund the FBI floating around on Twitter. A lot of people are calling for it. Okay, we talked all about defunding the police.
Yeah.
What about defunding the FBI? Like, where are the Democrats who are all about defunding the police? What about this? What about the FBI?
Oh, not if they're doing our bidding. And we're going to see that they absolutely are. It's fine to talk about these elected officials saying, well, we're going to get to the bottom of this, or we're going to. But again, as we saw today when the January 6th committee recommended Trump for criminal charges, they don't have that power. Like Marita Bartiromo was just asking, what are you going to do with your subpoena power? That's really all. They can compel you to testify. They can listen to what you have to say. They can write a lot of stern letters. As Red Pill Graphics in the chat said, more hearings, stern letters, no arrests, right? So we can get excited about what Congress does, and we always seem to, like a dog, like, ooh, good, there's going to be an investigation of this. We had that even around Robinhood when they decided to suppress stocks. But that doesn't mean anything happens.
No, and then and then SPF and FTX and all that stuff. Yeah.
It's just all theater. It's like they get everybody riled up. It's like this team versus this. It's like they just have us basically watching gladiators in a ring. And it's like we have these enormous battles and everybody battles it out on social and who's right, who's wrong. But the people who actually do things never pay for any of it.
No,
so
they don't.
It's all theater.
Yeah, I mean, think about
we don't do it.
Yeah, think about the 2008 collapse, right? The housing collapse. And no one in the United States, no one was prosecuted. No one. Can you imagine?
There were some committees.
Yeah, they had some committees and they sent some stern letters. So the other side of this, I'm really worried about. You have the Adam Shifty Schiff, Democrat Representative Adam Schiff of California. He's now threatening the social media companies after Elon Musk allowed conservatives back on Twitter. So this is the other side of this. Like, he's like, okay, now we need these social media companies to do a better job of policing. And if they don't do it, we're going to do it. He said that social media companies, that Congress would take away their Section 230 immunity if they do not moderate content. Like, what kind of country are we living in? Listen to Schiff.
I think we've got a big problem right now with social media companies and their failure to moderate content and the explosion of hate on Twitter. The banning of journalists on Twitter. I don't think these companies should enjoy an immunity from liability when they behave this way. We can't tell them what to say or not say, but we gave them immunity. We said, if you'll be responsible moderators of content, we will give you immunity. They haven't been, so why should they continue to enjoy that immunity from responsibility and liability?
So we can't tell you what to say. Yeah, you can. That's what the Twitter Files is all about, right? You've been telling people what they can and cannot say. They can't talk about COVID. They couldn't talk about vaccines on social media because you at the Department of Homeland Security and the CDC pushed these companies to do your bidding. So you absolutely have been doing that. And now you're upset that a few journalists got booted from Twitter for doxing people? Taylor Lorenz? I mean, she was actively publishing people's personal information and addresses on social media. That's what got her banned. Yes. Like, you're not allowed to dox people. You're not allowed to put out people's private information and where they live and their addresses.
And who has gotten hurt because Peter McCullough is back on Twitter?
Right.
Who's being harmed by that?
No, you should ask the other question. Who was harmed by him not being on Twitter?
That is a good question. Who's being hurt by Trump being reactivated? He's not even speaking. Myra Forrester, who got booted off of Twitter for saying that gender ideology will hurt women's policies and women's rights. Got booted off Twitter. She's back. Who's been hurt except for maybe trans activists' feelings and agenda?
Right. Some people in San Francisco got their feelings hurt
by seeing Myra Forrester's profile back and tweeting.
So Senator Hawley has been one of the people that's been going after the Department of Homeland Security, specifically going after Mayorkas on this disinformation campaign. How the relationship between the Department of Homeland Security and these social media companies. Like, what are you guys doing as far as like blocking and censoring content? And you know that this is going to even take on in the next couple of weeks here after Christmas, this is going to go full steam ahead. Here's Senator Hawley taking on Mayorkas on this question.
Example after example of this administration, coordinated apparently, according to a federal court, by your agency, pressuring, coercing social media companies to engage in censorship. Is that constitutional?
That is unequivocally false.
Is what the emails show.
It is unequivocally false, Senator.
You are not pressuring the big tech companies to take down accounts. You are not meeting with them to ask them to censor on your behalf.
That is correct. We are not.
Mr. Secretary, it has been established for years in this country, as you very well know because you're a lawyer, that the federal government may not use private third parties to engage in activities that are unconstitutional. That's exactly what you and this administration are doing. You are leveraging private companies to carry out censorship on your behalf. It's dystopian, but worse than that, it's unconstitutional.
It's also false.
It's absolutely true. So that was a total lie.
Yes.
He lied right to the American people that they were not, the Department of Homeland Security wasn't influencing Twitter, Facebook, etc. We now know that that was an absolute lie.
Yes, we're going to show you that in the Twitter files.
And so, too, when Christopher Wray, from the head of the FBI, sat there and lied right to the American people, right in that same committee on their influencing with social media companies. Nope, we're not involved in it. Nope, well, sorry, we're not.
Jen Psaki, Biden's press secretary, admitted it to the press and all of us that it was happening.
Right. Mm-hmm. But nope, that's unequivocally false. Nope, not going to say anything. So we got this new round of Twitter files that just dropped a few hours ago. Number 7, I guess, is the new batch of Twitter files.
Okay, so no, I think that's number 8. We're losing count. We're just going to sort of catch you up of what we haven't covered over the weekend, and then we'll get to, so there were 2 document dumps by Matt Taibbi over the weekend, and then a few hours ago by Michael Schellenberger. So let's just start with the Matt Taibbi ones that they called them like supplements. So I'm a little getting lost in the, if they would just use ABC, I might be a little bit, or Roman numerals, or
like Super Bowls.
I don't know.
I'm for the Roman numerals, because then at some point we get the X-Files.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
All right. So this is the batch from this weekend.
This is from Saturday. They're at least dated. We'll just go with Saturday. Okay. So what he said, what he establishes over Saturday is just that the FBI contact with Twitter is constant and pervasive. He calls it a subsidiary. He talks about this Yoel Roth, who we've talked about many times. Between these 2 years, there are over 150 emails going back and forth. Some are fine, like, hey, Happy New Year. Looking forward to our quarterly call next week, which we will see quickly becomes a weekly call. But he says a surprisingly high number are requests by the FBI for Twitter to take action on election misinformation, even involving joke tweets from low follower accounts. Number 7 is the real one that I want to bring your attention to. It says the FBI Social Media Focus Task Force, known as FTIF, created in the wake of the 2016 election, swelled to 80 agents and corresponded with Twitter to identify alleged foreign influence and election tampering of all kinds. So that should bother us because it was created as a result of the 2016 election. So here is the government saying, we didn't like how this election turned out. You can agree with them if you want to. You can even say, I didn't like 2016's election either, but it was a fair election. It was an open election. And they said, we don't like how that went. So we're going in to make sure that the people don't speak for themselves and let this happen again. Now, that brings up all kinds of questions because this was created under Trump. The outcome meant that Trump was elected. They didn't like it, so they started to then work against it. Did he know? Was he maybe not paying attention, or was it kept from him? Would he have stopped it, knowing that a government agency was working to prevent his reelection?
I mean, clearly he would have. I mean, this is the deep state working behind the scenes on this. If he knew about it, of course he would have. You like to think he would have.
Again, what I see so often is people who don't like Trump saying, "Yeah, that was necessary because we didn't want another Trump," but you should be bothered by this because it's unelected officials saying we can't let democracy run its course if we get this guy.
You're too stupid to vote, so we can't let your votes count. So we're gonna sway an election instead because you guys are too stupid.
Yes, and so I saw the President Trump ad from last week. Who said he's saying if I am ever reelected, I'll never let this happen. But it did happen so I want some answers on how this was kept from him, how it happened, how, it was happening inside the Justice Department, which was a mess because of the Mueller investigation. So it's quite likely he wasn't paying attention because there was another mess happening around Russiagate, which we're going to get to in a second. Now, Taibbi points out that many government agencies, were working to flag content for Twitter. The Department of Homeland Security and the FBI were the biggies. And it was fairly brazen, too. They didn't ask. They told, here's an email. It's like, hey, FBI San Francisco is notifying you of these accounts, which we'd like you to take action on. And it was just like it was like a chore list. At one point, they gave them such a long list of users to take action on that Twitter employees had to sort of high-five each other, like, whoa, that was a lot. Thanks, everybody, for working on that. As if the FBI were paying their salaries. They weren't. Twitter was, but they were acting as if they worked for the government. Taibbi points
look
out
at that signature. It just says Fred, FBI SF, and it's not like any official. Like, you know how an official government email, it should say, like, this email is sent from the government. You know, like, there should be, but it's just Fred. Where they're on FBI. A first-name basis with Fred.
Right.
Fred. I should point
FBI
out.
Fred again.
We learned from Michael Schellenberger this afternoon that, in fact, the FBI was paying Twitter. So the FBI was paying, they raised, and Jim Baker was like high-fiving in the office. They got over $3 million from the FBI. They paid them for their staffing time. So the FBI was actively paying Twitter money.
I mean, at least they weren't, using.
But they're using our tax dollars to censor Americans. Think about that. Like, you pay your taxes, it goes to the IRS, it gets dispersed. The FBI gets some money, uses some of its budget from you to censor you. Really? I mean, that's an abusive relationship.
Now,
I wonder if that went directly to the people that were helping, like Yoel Roth and people like I wonder if they got their palms greased for helping.
Oh, yes. I would like to see a little bit of finances from Yoel Roth. Okay, that's an interesting question. Taibbi points out that the ubiquity of the 2016 Russian interference story as stated pretext for building out the censorship machine can't be overstated. It's analogous to how 9/11 inspired the expansion of the security estate. Here's documentation that he posts of this. The Office of Intelligence and Analysis talking about how Russian malign influence use of permissive social media platforms. Now, I don't have the screens from Michael Schellenberger, which just happened a few hours ago, but actually, as it relates to the Russian story, Twitter was constantly being told by the FBI that Russian influence was pervasive and it was going to increase, and specifically that it was responsible for the Hunter Biden laptop story. Yoel Roth, to his credit, continues to say, we don't see that. We don't see a lot of Russian bots. We don't see a lot of Russian accounts posing as Americans. We don't see a lot of Russian information campaigns. We definitely don't see it around. He just keeps pushing back and saying, okay, yeah, we'll look for that, but we don't see it. In fact, he even told Kara Swisher that when they warned him that this might be Russian influence, he had said, it sort of set off my spidey sense and didn't feel right, but I went along with it. I mean, he doesn't give us the whole story in that I went along with it because they were my BFFs for 2 years prior. Right. He just said like, oh, I thought, okay, I'll do this. No, he had been actively groomed to do so. In fact, he outlines, Matt Taibbi, what happens when governments flagged things that were not bounced and how that is so unusual that they were asked to explain, like, hey, we told you to do this. Why didn't it happen? The agency had a direct channel called Teleporter to report things they didn't like. In a thread, Yoel Roth, I can't say that quickly. It just doesn't roll off the tongue. Corresponds on Sunday, this is more we got from Sunday, with an FBI agent about foreign intelligence, which the FBI doesn't usually deal with. They're more of a domestic outfit. The senior executive circulates the note in confusion because he feels like that Twitter has been really compliant. So, the government's saying, why didn't you do what we told you here? We need more information. We need more control. And he's like, I don't understand why you're asking me for these things, why you're pushing me. And he circulates the note and he says, I don't know what they're so upset about because I've definitely been clear with them that official state propaganda is definitely a thing. So it's like you're saying to your boyfriend, I gave you what you wanted. What are you talking about? I gave you everything. that state propaganda is definitely a thing on Twitter. We're besties. You don't need more. We're good. Now, someone from the FBI responded to these files.
We've been doing your bidding. Now, the narrative has been shaped because of what you wanted, right? You've been able to block and censor. So that's definitely a thing. What you've got, what you've been able to accomplish.
Your state propaganda is definitely a thing. So the clip that you just played of Mayorkas saying that the Homeland Security didn't get involved in private companies and censorship was absolutely a lie, because we have emails from DHS. Now, someone from the FBI responded to these files and saying, well, hey, the FBI regularly engages with private companies in order to identify foreign malign influence characters. But that does not account for them tracking and engaging with private sector about citizens,
right?
About domestic issues. And it certainly doesn't give them the right to act as a subsidiary of a media company that basically made Twitter state-run media.
Yeah, that's exactly what they are. And Facebook as well. Again, if they're describing them as a subsidiary, they're literally telling and sending these things to employees and telling them you remove all of these accounts, censor all of these accounts. Oh, and by the way, we're paying you $3 million for all of this staffing time.
Yes.
We've provided the staff. We've got, the 17 different members from the FBI that are on your staff at Twitter. And we're going to make sure that this is all policed and done properly. That is a subsidiary.
Well, and think about it as well, that the FBI can't just say, okay, we're just going to take $3 million that we just have laying around. They have to get approval from that. That money has to come from our government, from us.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they had to get approved somehow.
Well, I mean, again, this comes back to the black, the black funding that I've talked with Colonel McGregor about. It's how are we funding? How are you as a U.S. taxpayer paying for mercenaries in Ukraine right now? U.S. mercenaries in Ukraine, you are paying for that. You're paying for American troops to be in Ukraine on a black budget salary, and that's where a lot of the stuff just gets funneled from these black budget salaries. The black budget money that you don't ever see. They don't actually vote on it in public. You don't ever see it. It's not a congressional hearing or anything. It just pops into a.
I mean, it turns out you see a list, a Slack channel. In the Michael Schellenberger release that came a few hours ago, that there were so many former FBI employees that they had their own Slack channel, private Slack channel called BU alum, Bureau, I suppose.
Bureau alum. Can you imagine?
BU alum.
They had their own Slack channel where they were that's where the feds hang out. Don't.
Right.
Oh my God.
Okay, we're working on this today. What does
What
does J. Edgar Hoover want?
Let's go after other Hollywood actors.
This is some Pinky in the Brain kind of stuff. What are we going to do today, guys? The same thing we do every day. Let's oppress free speech.
Yes.
Seriously.
Good. I'll meet you at the coffee. You put on a pot of coffee. Let's go oppress and censor some people. We're going to be watching this closely because we're waiting for the COVID files and all this. But that's number 7 from Schellenberger. So we'll see if we get an investigation here. But this is really one of the biggest stories, and the mainstream media just largely ignoring it. Here's another big story that the mainstream media is ignoring: the FDA dropping a bombshell on Pfizer, on the Pfizer vaccine. So way to catch up, FDA. Welcome to the party, pal. That's taken you this long. The Food and Drug Administration has finally just admitted that Pfizer's shot has some serious potential side effects, and they lay it out in this new study: blood clots, pulmonary embolisms.
But you know what? That's okay, because the birth control pill has those things too, and no one cares.
Right? Yeah. Stroke. Pulmonary embolisms,
blood clots, absolutely,
blood clots.
Yeah, and that's all right.
That's right, because then women.
That's cool.
Yeah,
it's just about women.
It's just about women.
Or I'm sorry. It's just about uterus havers.
Uterus havers.
Who cares?
Yeah, not women anymore.
I prefer bleeders.
But even these, the Pfizer vaccine. I mean, it's still emergency use authorized, right? It's still not approved. So. And as according to Peter McCullough, if you had these type of adverse events and adverse effects, they would have been taken off the shelf, absolutely removed and blocked. So this is no small study. They looked over 30 million data points. This is what the FDA did. From the U.S. Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, the CMS data system shows a heightened risk of pulmonary embolism, as well as known elevated risk for myocarditis. The study, we'll link it up in the description below so you can go through the study and take a look at it. But let me just pull from this study and explain what this says. So from Epic Times this afternoon had an update on this. Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine has been linked to blood clotting, according to the report, in older individuals. And this is according to the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. So this is from the FDA concluding in this study. FDA researchers crunching data from a database of elderly persons in the United States found that pulmonary embolism, blood clotting in the lungs, met the initial threshold for a statistical signal and continued meeting the criteria after a more in-depth evaluation. 3 other outcomes of interest: a lack of oxygen to the heart, a blood platelet disorder called immune thrombocytopenia, and another type of clotting called intravascular coagulation. Initially raised red flags, researchers said. More in-depth evaluations, such as comparisons with populations who received influenza vaccines, showed those 3 as no longer meeting the statistical threshold for a signal. Researchers looked at data covering 17 million elderly Americans who received a total of 34 million doses of the vaccine from December 10th to 2020 through January 16th, 2022. So just a short window of time.
Now,
I mean, like a year and a month.
Yeah. I had never even heard of blood clot in the lungs until a colleague of ours recently mentioned it. I didn't even know that was possible.
That it was possible, or that it was happening because of this?
Both.
Yeah. The study, of course, when they wrap things up in this study, this is what they always do, right? Because they don't want to be on the wrong side of getting in trouble with funding or whatever. I don't know. But when the study wraps up, they basically couch it as, well, the findings claiming that the benefits of the vaccines outweigh the risks. So, yes, this is bad, but, the benefits of the vaccines, the COVID vaccines, outweigh the risks, they said. However, that would only be clearly the case if a patient did not have natural antibodies and was at an increased due to risk factors such as age, obesity, or immunocompromised. The data shows that nearly every American in the United States has been exposed now to SARS-CoV-2. And the FDA said it was not taking any action based on the study. So glad we did this study. We looked at 34 million Americans. For a year, we saw all of these adverse effects. We're not going to do anything about it. The FDA claimed the findings are still under investigation and require more robust study.
But so do the vaccines, given that they, especially the most recent ones, skipped clinical trials.
I mean, this is a bigger study than when we've had adverse effects and they've pulled things off the store shelves in the past.
Yes.
Way less of a study. But they've had certain instances of adverse effects and they've pulled things off the shelf.
But when you juxtapose it with the story we did in the newsletter this morning about how the CDC is touting the results of 2 small statistical studies that showed that the bivalent booster may reduce hospitalizations. They did not do that based on any clinical trials. They only analyzed current statistical data and said that it seems as if those who had this booster were less likely to be hospitalized, but they did not account for recent COVID infection. So you can't really know who has natural antibodies and who doesn't. Mm-hmm. But they are splashing these about. And you think about it, the media is happy to say, oh, okay, let's make that a headline. CDC says bivalent booster reduces risk of hospitalization based on statistical analysis, not trials. And then we have actual trial data, actual medical result data, and they're not motivated at all to splash those around as headlines.
No, and I mean, even if just look at the other big piece of the story this afternoon, I haven't seen this covered anywhere. I mean, maybe like the Gateway Pundit and Epic Times, but they're the only places, like really no other coverage of this. They'll cover the January 6th. That's what they're doing right now on mainstream media. Trump, referral, criminal charges, blah, blah, blah. So reports from the Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System, or the VAERS system, including non-domestic reports, show that there are now over 1.4 million cases of COVID-19 vaccine adverse reactions, including more than 32,000 deaths through December. This is the CDC's website. Here is the CDC's website. This is the VAERS system, the reporting system. And as we've talked here on the show before, only a fraction of these ever make it to the VAERS reporting system in the first place, right? Because the amount of paperwork that it takes for you to fill one of these VAERS reports out, there's so many that just go unreported. They never make it to this list.
Said that that's most likely 1 to 2% is reported, like if that.
So Dr. Peter McCullough, chief medical advisor for the Truth for Health Foundation, told the Times via email that this new study corroborates the concerns of doctors that the large uptick in blood clots, progression of atherosclerotic heart disease, and blood disorders is independently associated with this, and we need to do something about it. The White House continues to push these shots, though. The COVID czar, Dr. Ashish Jha, just yesterday on ABC News with Martha Raddatz, said, we gotta, we always go get our flu shots, right? So you just go and get these boosters, is what he's saying.
Okay, but wait, before you play this, does she ask them if they're ever going to go through clinical trials?
Let's find out. Let's see what let's see if she asks that question.
Okay.
Let's see. Watch.
Dr. Jha, we've talked to you many times. You say the White House strategy is to get boosted, get tested, wear masks. You and I have both talked about the lack of masks across the country. You're just not seeing them. That's the strategy, but only 14% of people who can get that booster have done it. So how can you say that is really working?
Well, what I would say is it is a comprehensive strategy, testing, treatment, vaccines. Our job is to make sure those things are widely available, easily accessible. They remain free for Americans. We're going to continue making that case. And then obviously, a lot of our efforts are focused on older Americans. Those are the ones who really tend to get sick, end up in the hospital. This is ongoing work. It's shared collective responsibilities. It's not just the White House. We're asking governors to step up, mayors to step up, religious leaders to step up. Because if we're going to get a country as big and diverse as ours through this difficult period, we're all going to have to pull on this together.
Well, according to a new poll from the Kaiser Family Foundation, the top 2 reasons people are not getting vaccinated are, number 1, they don't think they need it, or they don't think the benefit is worth it.
Yeah, so first of all, from a benefit point of view, these are incredibly safe vaccines. They clearly work. They clearly reduce infections to some degree, hospitalizations and deaths to a very, very large degree. The thing I remind people often say, well, I got my booster last year, do I really need it? And I say, well, I got my flu shot last year. I don't expect that to protect me this winter. I go out and get my flu shot every winter, and the same way people have to go out and get their COVID shot every year.
She did not ask him about clinical trials. She's saying that people are making excuses, basically. Not that, hey, there's some actual concern about no clinical trials, given the original at least had some.
Wouldn't she also, huge news out of Britain last week? That's if I were interviewing him, that would have been the first question. Doctor, the White House, here's how I would have asked that question of Dr. Ashish Jha. The White House continues to tell Americans to go out and get boosted, multiple booster shots, right? And for children, young people. In Britain last week, a member of parliament stood up and is demanding that these shots be taken off the shelf and stopped from being handed out because of dangerous adverse effects. Do they know something that we don't, or do you not know something that they don't? What happened here? And then I would have loved to have seen his answer about the UK having these issues.
I don't know. He could have said a lot of bullshit about that.
I'm glad he didn't use his tagline, God gave us 2 arms, that whole tagline. But, this is, Philip, can you bring up that document or the showing the VAERS information again? Because my question would have been, how come we're seeing in the VAERS system this many deaths, 32,828 deaths, right? And typically, a pharmaceutical will be black labeled at 25 deaths, pulled completely from the market at 50. How are we here?
Yeah, I didn't have the numbers off the top of my head. That's a great point.
Question.
That's the point that, Dr. Peter McCullough and others have been making, and that's what they've been making in Britain last week. if they hit like certain little thresholds, they've been yanked off the shelves. How are we here with this? And he's there sitting there. Oh, these are totally safe. It's fine. Go out and get them. Get them regularly. Get them regularly, just like you would with the flu shot.
Unless it's birth control. Again, birth control continues to have these adverse effects on women, and no one gives a shit. So,
Well.
But yes, I'm with you. I just feel like, someone has to talk about both things.
It's always the women. Bring it back to the women.
Well, and there's probably more. Is there not more data showing that, percentage-wise, it is safer? Do you know what I mean? There's been this many. It is a side effect, but it only affects this many versus how many.
I think it's more pervasive than we think, but I would have to dig into that. But synthetic hormones have a lot of risks, and more than we are told. When you buy a little dial of birth control pills, and it comes with a whole little long fold out of, I guess we just, as women, we don't read it because we think, oh, my doctor would have told me that. But it's big and thick for a reason, and because there are a lot of negative effects of that.
So we'll be keeping our eye on this.
One benefit is the paper that you're talking about that comes with the vaccines that is blank. So at least there's.
Is there a paper that comes with the vaccine?
It's blank. They don't have
blank.
Yeah.
Oh.
And if you watch Died Suddenly, it's completely a white piece of paper, and it says blank. It says specific blank for something. It says why.
Well,
intentionally left blank. It says.
If you were watching football this weekend, if you were watching any sporting event or live television this weekend, you would have seen advertisements for the COVID vaccine in the United States, right? And they don't have to put, because it's emergency authorized. It's not FDA approved.
Yeah.
So they don't have to put, when you see all of those drug commercials at the end.
Oh, about erectile dysfunction.
May cause bleeding, may cause blah, 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 leakage, all the list of adverse effects. If you watch the COVID commercials, they don't have to say any of that. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
What kind of clown world are we living in right now?
I hadn't noticed that.
And you know that there was a meeting, and one guy was like, you know what? I know how we can get around all this. I know how we can get around all this data that we've got. Just give us emergency use.
Mm-hmm.
Done.
Yeah.
Billions in profits.
Yeah, billions in profits. We can speed through it. We don't even have to negotiate. We're going to get them out there, and we don't even have to report any of the side effects. We don't have to go through the normal hoops and hurdles that we would have to.
Yeah, and the government will market it for us.
Yeah. Great.
Biopharmaceutical complex. More on that story in just a moment. We're going to talk about the NIH and what the Wuhan lab story in just a second. Wait till you hear about the gain of function story and Fauci. So that's coming up next. And also we're going to talk about what is a family. There's a lot of pushback now against traditional family. You're hearing this from the left saying maybe we should get rid of the term family altogether. Maybe we should just say F the family. Get rid of the family idea. And so we're going to break all that down. What does that mean?
This is a good time to say F the family because it's the holidays.
Right. Yeah. This is the one time a year when we can all say it.
Everybody says that.
There was a guy an author that did something called Focus on the Family, but I don't think that's the F you're talking about, right?
No, that's a different one. No, that was that's a different guy.
James Dobson or something like that.
James Dobson, Focus on the Family. No, it's a different guy. All right. But first, I want to tell you about our friends over at Moomoo because it's time to get some free stocks right now. And right now, till the end of the year, December 31st, they went from 15 stocks. Now they're giving away 20 free stocks. Free stocks before the end of the year by December 31st. You have to use our link on the screen if you go to redacted.inc/Moomoo. Now, Moomoo is a brokerage, right? They're just celebrating their 10th anniversary. They're giving away free money. They are a $6 billion company with 18 million different users around the world. Sorry, they're an exchange. So they have one of the best trading experiences to buy stocks, buy crypto, buy commodities. If you're buying oil companies, you want to buy some gold producers, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Plus, they've got the training platform. So if you just want to get these free stocks and not do anything else with the account, just sit there and let them grow in value, great. But they've got training that you can learn how to trade stocks as well inside their platform, totally free. The market right now is totally in the toilet. So why not just get these free stocks and sit there and let them grow in your account? So you can do that right now for their 10th anniversary bonus. They're giving away $10 bonus as well, plus those 20 free stocks valued up to $30,000 for a limited time. And for our Australian friends, you can sign up for Moomoo and get up to $110 cash back. They're doing this for Australia specifically till December 31st. So we'll have links in the description of this video. You can go check them out. Go to redacted.inc/Moomoo and get your free stocks today and let them grow. And then, hey, you can sell the stocks and keep the money in your account and do whatever you want with it. So check them out today, redacted.inc/Moomoo. We will have links in the description of this video. All right, we've got more news to get to. We're going to talk about the NIH caught trying to hide gain of function funding, which is fascinating. Fauci basically caught lying once again. And we're also going to talk about what it means to be a family. But first, please subscribe to the channel. If you do, your name will pop up here on the big board. So hit that subscribe button.
Well, specifically, we're going to talk about why if you talk about family or marriage, you're a homophobe or a transphobe.
Yeah, so if you want to talk about traditional family, you're a problem. You're a problem for the left. All right, let's talk about the NIH. So they're actually still doing this at the Wuhan lab. You won't believe what they're still doing at the Wuhan lab with American tax dollars, your American tax dollars, if you happen to be American. Yes, with your money. The Daily Caller has uncovered evidence that the National Institutes of Health, the NIH, is still keeping the money flowing into the Wuhan lab. Like, you can't even make this up anymore. In secret, they're doing this. So here's their exclusive. Internal videos reveal NIH plan to keep money flowing to risky research in Wuhan. So let's just go through this Daily Caller piece a little bit here. An internal National Institutes of Health presentation from June reveals that the agency flagged legislative amendments aimed at defunding gain-of-function research as amendments to watch, they said, and argued that they were based on conspiracy theories. The director's report presentation given in June to the director meeting unearthed by taxpayer watchdog group White Coat Waste Project identifies 4 amendments to the American Competes Act as amendments to watch. All 4 amendments were introduced by Republican lawmakers in an attempt to stop or rein in the funding of gain-of-function research in China and other places, specifically, though, at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. And so the NIH has funded either directly or indirectly gain-of-function research in the United States and abroad dating back a number of years. Of course, we brought you the Boston College story just a few weeks ago. That was a revelation that they were funding the Boston College. Like, what? You're doing it here in Boston? Like, what the hell?
Since way before the pandemic.
Right.
Before any lockdowns.
Yeah. So you had this, you were literally working on it in the United States and you lied about it. And it was signed off by you can go to their website, you could go to Boston University's or Boston College, I forget, it was Boston University. And you could literally see on their website that it was funded by the NIH. So you're lying, Dr. Fauci. So COVID arguably started in the Wuhan lab.
But in his recent deposition, he said, I never approved those things. They didn't make it up to me. He was busy. He was floating above. He didn't know. But
he emphatically told us a number of times that that the NIH did not fund gain-of-function research. American taxpayers didn't pay for it, so they lied about it. Watch.
I don't know how many times I can say it, Madam Chair. We did not fund gain-of-function research to be conducted in the Wuhan Institute of Virology.
Mm-hmm. So as part of this, what Senator Roger Marshall is now going to be looking at with this, they're still funding gain-of-function research in Wuhan. Like, how the hell does this happen? So Senator Roger Marshall says our investigation is uncovering new evidence each day that connects the NIH financial sponsorship to risky viral pathogen projects. We're also seeing NIH's blatant disregard for research processes that are supposed to mitigate risks that can cause pandemics like COVID-19. Responsible efforts underway in Congress are designed to prevent funding for dangerous research that benefits the Chinese Communist Party and protect America's public health. For the lead and the NIH congressional liaison to lash out at these efforts is, as conspiracy theories, says to me that NIH leadership is feeling the walls closing in on their negligence. They're afraid that the money is going to dry up soon and they're going to be held accountable for their role in the lab leak that led to the coronavirus pandemic. So a lot of experts believe, of course, that it did start there, that COVID started in the Wuhan lab, where U.S.-funded gain-of-function research was taking place. As a result of the lab accident, many Republican lawmakers are now calling on the NIH to stop the funding completely, saying this should be illegal. We shouldn't be doing this at all. And they've been rolling out this legislation to try to stop it. And they keep saying,
under Obama, it was made illegal.
Yeah. Can you believe that? Like, it was too dangerous, too many problems. You're going to take this thing and you're going to alter it and make it more prone to attach itself to human beings.
Right. And when asked about this in a deposition around the lawsuit between the two attorneys generals who are suing the Biden administration around censorship around COVID information, when Dr. Fauci was deposed in late November, he said, yes, I know it's illegal. And he said, but exemptions can be made, right? This was what he was asked. And he said, yes, exemptions can be made. Were there exceptions made? I don't know. They didn't make it up to me. So he was the head of the NIH. He knew that there was a law prohibiting something. And if exceptions were made, somehow he was not interested in keeping track of those exceptions.
Yeah,
he didn't know, didn't make it up to him. That's what he said.
I feel like we're being naive to think that that's not what was happening in Ukraine too. Like, there's a reason they wanted this stuff off of U.S. soil, because they could be they didn't have to follow U.S. law in Wuhan or in Ukraine. So I think that kind of stuff is happening in more places than we know, only so that they can subvent the law.
Yeah.
Subvert. Yes.
Yeah. I mean,
subvert.
Yeah, substitution.
Circumcise the law.
Circumcise, yeah. They circumcision the law. So they, in Ukraine specifically, I mean, how many of these biolabs were there? And we now know that they weren't just there like testing like allergies. You know, they were doing some serious shit. This is why Mike Gallagher, Republican, is now calling for a full investigation. And why is this even still happening? Why is this even, like, this should be illegal right now? Watch.
Here's what's interesting. Why did money continue to flow to the EcoHealth Alliance after Fauci knew that EcoHealth was not in compliance with the required paperwork? This happened during the pandemic after we knew EcoHealth was in violation. And the fact that we haven't already outlawed gain-of-function research when we now know about the dangers of it. Gain-of-function research was, of course, something Fauci advocated for the better part of the last decade, is insane to me. So there's a variety of things we need to do. We need to get all this out into the open. And the fact is, every time we try to get a document from NIH, every time we try to get a document from NIAID, Fauci's organization, it's like pulling teeth. The scientists should be in favor of transparency. That's a critical part of the scientific method, trying to disprove your working hypothesis.
Yeah. So that's Mike Gallagher. James Comer also on the House Intelligence Committee is furious about this and says that we need to get to the bottom of this, and we're gonna call for a full investigation on this when they take power in January. Watch.
Most concerning to me is, number one, U.S. tax dollars were sent to that lab to do that dangerous gain-of-function research, and number two, by all accounts, the intelligence community has covered up every effort to try to determine the true origination of COVID-19. So what we're doing on the House Oversight Committee, we've sent letters to 40 government employees. Every government employee that had anything to do with sending tax dollars to EcoHealth Alliance received a letter from us. Any government employee that had anything to do with sending grant dollars to any of the scientists in America who defended Dr. Fauci's terrible decision-making throughout COVID, they got a letter. So I don't think a lot of people were expecting us, Maria, to start at the bottom, but we've identified all 40 of these employees, 12 of whom had never been identified before, and we've asked them to come before the House Oversight Committee to be interviewed in these transcribed interviews starting in January.
Yeah, so these 40 employees, they were keeping these names secret. So the House Intelligence Committee got their names, found out who they are, and now they're going after them, and they're hauling their asses in front of Congress to testify on the record in written transcripts to get to the bottom of this and what this gain-of-function research was happening.
I still get irritated that they don't keep going back a little bit further to 2017 when Fauci was telling Trump that there was going to be a pandemic, because saying that and having the knowledge of what was going on, because they already knew that the coronavirus wasn't going to attach to humans, so they were adding that so that it did. So if he had the foreknowledge of that, knew what kind of research they were doing, and was that confident, not saying there might be a pandemic, He said it will happen. So, like, they're not going back and drawing that timeline to, like, did he have foreknowledge of this? Like, that makes this way worse than what they're saying.
Well, of course they did, right? Because we know that they did because they were planning for it in that summertime. I mean, they had literally a meeting about it and what their plans were for lockdowns and everything else. So they knew that this was coming. I mean, Bill Gates knew that this was coming. There was all the warning signs. And of course, I mean, yeah, I would love to know. I would love to hear what they get from him. And Fauci has said he will testify. Like, if he's called upon to testify, he said he will. He doesn't, miss an opportunity to be in front of the camera. So
yes, but we probably will get a lot of what we got out of his depositions was a lot of, I do not recall, I wasn't involved in that, I don't know.
Yeah.
It was like watching Oliver North.
It's like a dead end.
Yeah.
It's a dead end.
But I mean, right now, this gain of function research is still happening. It's being funded by U.S. taxpayers, and they've been lying about it. So it's continuing to happen in China. We'll continue to watch this story, and we'll bring you that as soon as there's some congressional move on that side of things.
Really quick, did you guys ever see Stranger Than Fiction with Will Ferrell?
No, that was on my list. I never did get to see it.
One of the best. You need to watch it because Megan Gyllenhaal plays the woman character in there, and he's auditing her as an IRS agent because she refused to pay all of her taxes. And what she said was, I just didn't pay the part that you send for war. If we would all just keep the taxes that pay for war, which is 55%, keep the taxes that are paying for this gain of function, and only pay a percentage of our taxes that actually goes to bridges, roads, and that stuff, they wouldn't be able to do this stuff. We give them so much money for them to just waste inefficiently. And it just is so frustrating because by proxy now, I'm responsible for the pandemic. I'm responsible for what's going on in Ukraine. I'm responsible for people dying all over the world. And I hate that.
Yeah, we just did our taxes, and I know it's all going right to this. It's all going right to war.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I do tax planning every month, so it's a kick right in the balls if I had them, which I don't.
All right, let's talk about the family.
All right.
Let's focus on the family during this holiday season.
All right. Well, forget husband and wife. The woke mob now wants to remake the definition of a family. Now, here's how you can tell that this is an agenda of activists and not actually like people who want to promote alternative ways of living. It's because you can't live the way you're living without hurting their feelings. Now, people who have fought their entire lives for gay rights, they just want to be married and live their own life. They don't want to be married and then go out and tell you that you can't be married. Right. So this is an agenda. This is they're offended because you're offended and they're offended in return. So specifically, they're mad at people who say they want to have a family because this transhumanist agenda is that, you can self-identify into any gender you'd like and then go and mutilate your body in pursuit of that and force yourself into dangerous drugs and surgeries. So that's why they're mad at the idea of a family when you've used your biology in the way that your human reproductive system really wants to.
So they're mad at me and you because we
used our genitals.
We used our genitals to have children.
And had 3 babies.
That's not allowed. I'm sorry.
Okay.
That's not allowed to do that.
We didn't use them on each other. We used them with
I didn't get the memo. I guess we're not allowed to do that anymore. You have to go through some surgery process.
Okay. But so trans activists, they can have a family, but they want to promote agendas which will prevent other people from having a family. Now, here is Transgender Assistant Secretary of Health Rachel Levine talking about how they transition from living as a man to living as a woman over a long period of time, 10 years, in fact. And they said that today's children are impatient and they don't want to do that. They want to transition like that. And so that's why we have the drugs and the surgery. They want to transition right away. And Levine supports that transition with drugs and surgery that make one sterile. And here's what Levine said.
So I took a long time. I don't regret any of that. But I have no regrets because if I transitioned when I was young, and I wouldn't have my children. Mm-hmm. I can't imagine a life without my children. And so every experience led me to here. And so how could I regret that?
So as a biological male, Levine fathered children which they are admitting was a great joy and privilege in life. But we've shown you in many cases that Levine promotes what they call gender-affirming care, meaning using surgery and pharmaceuticals to change someone's body to affirm a different sex from birth. The problem is, as we've discussed many times, you can't have a baby if you give a teenager a hysterectomy. You can't nurse that baby if you cut off your boobs. You can't and maybe shouldn't father a child if you've been on cross-sex hormones for years and years. We don't have studies on that because doing studies isn't ethical, but just going ahead and doing it apparently is not. In fact, that's what medical associations say. Nobody will approve the studies on, let's see what happens when 15-year-old girls get hysterectomy. Let's see what happens when 12-year-olds are put on puberty blockers. We know that the data shows that they are more likely to get osteoporosis and have memory loss. We know that because puberty is a process which matures the brain, but we won't do studies on it because it would mean subjecting kids to something that we know makes them sterile. Go ahead, David.
Well, I was going to say, don't they also lose like sexual pleasure for the rest of their lives? Like it becomes like a...
It's not something they lose. It's something they never gain, in fact, because puberty is what brings on the ability to have an orgasm, and they won't. They just won't. So Levine here is admitting that using the biology of the body to have children is a wondrous thing, but then also Levine is actively promoting medical interventions that would prevent young people from doing just that. So as someone sent me this on Twitter, it's like children for thee, but for me, but not for thee, right?
Right.
So here's a few other transgender stories to update you with. Researchers in France last Thursday were presenting research that showed a connection between confusing children and gender activity, meaning it does hurt children by putting all of this on them, having teachers who tell them that they are trisexual or what have you, and, you know, tri-gendered, and telling them that they're not boys and girls and such. Specifically, this research warns on the psychological conditioning of minors faced with the obsession of some caregivers around gender dysphorias. Well, trans activists didn't like that, so they showed up at the French cafe that was going to present these researchers' research, and they threw clay pots full of poop. I don't know which kind of poop, because the pictures we're showing you here shows very powdery poop, so it looks like maybe it's fertilizer or horse poop. When they were asked to engage instead of do violent things, the activists just ran out. Instead, they sort of preferred to terrorize and vandalize. They also did flip up chairs, and they said, do you want to talk? Do you want to debate this? This idea that having someone with gender dysphoria, actively promoting gender dysphoria in children, is actually psychological damaging? No, they did not. They absolutely did not. Somehow the women were still able to have the event. So these are the kind of stories we're seeing very regularly, this just disruption of open discussion around these types of effects.
I feel like it's just because they know how weak their arguments are. Like, they just know how easy it is to tear these arguments apart.
Yes.
And so they don't want to have a discussion.
Yeah, they don't want to talk about it. They'd rather just throw pots of
poop
manure at people.
Yeah. So moving on to an update on transgender athletes. Over the weekend, the International Olympic Committee has updated its policy on transgender participation in sports to limit eligibility in some cases. Now, previously, the IOC had said that there is no presumptive advantage for trans women entering women's competition, which we know to be utterly false. We presented you research last week that showed that the fastest times in certain sprinting events for women are broken every year by men and boys. We've showed you records around weightlifting. We've showed you records around swimming. Absolutely, the gendered body does have an advantage or a disadvantage when it comes to certain performative sports. Now, the IOC has updated Principle 4, and they said that Principle 4 recognizes that sports organizations may at times need to issue eligibility criteria for sex-segregated competition to maintain a fair and proportionate distribution of competitive advantages among participants. This is a little bit vague, and I think it's probably purposeful, because I think that what they're trying to do is leave room for certain sports to maybe not be gendered. I was trying to think of what sport would be okay to have ungendered competition. Shooting?
Yeah, shooting has absolutely no.
I would say fencing.
The no strength advantage.
So, okay. So I think that that's probably why they're saying that it maybe will be in a sport by sport case. They also recognize the particular importance of advancing equality for women in sport and preserving fair and meaningful competition for elite women athletes, which means that you can't have these women training their lives to then play a game they can't win. And it says may require criteria that limit eligibility. I'm not exactly sure how they're going to do that. Sure, if there are sports that they have data that shows that there is not a biological difference, like shooting, or archery, what Philip just brought up, great. I don't want to see their qualifications based on testosterone level, because we've talked about this a lot of times. Testosterone is not the only thing that advances a body into a male from a boy to a man. It's just one of many things. So, I think that that's interesting, and I think that that's a really nice move for women and acknowledging women's participation in sport, and I'm for it. And finally, activists this Christmas are really upset with Candace Cameron, who you may know as DJ Tanner from Full House, because she says she wants to make movies about marriage and family. Now, she doesn't say she doesn't like people who don't have traditional marriage and family. She doesn't say that she doesn't like gay marriage or trans family. She doesn't say any of that. She just says she wants to make movies about marriage and family.
How dare her?
Because she thinks those things are great, and she's a Christian. Here is her super hateful quote in the Wall Street Journal. She's asked about Great American Family, which is a new TV network that she is sort of the main superstar of. She left the Hallmark Channel because the Hallmark Channel was sort of doing, Hallmark movies, made for TV Hallmark movies, which my mom and I used to really like to watch together. And now they're starting to do some about same-sex marriage. She's a traditional, I don't know if I want to use that word. She's a Christian who feels like that doesn't jive with her. I don't even want to put words in her mouth. I'm saying she's just saying that she didn't say anything about that. She just left that network in order to go to this more Christian network.
The point is that she's just saying, I want to make Christmas movies about families. She's promoting this new Christmas movie.
So
right?
She was just asked, okay, your old network is now making a lesbian love story.
Okay.
Do you think your new network will do this? And she said no. She doesn't think her new network will do this. She thinks her new network will keep traditional marriage at the core. She didn't say she doesn't like that. She didn't say she doesn't want to be associated with that. She didn't say that was wrong. She just said
What's this? That's
no.
no different than Tim Burton being like, I'm just going to make horror movies. That's all I want to make. I want to make dark horror movies, and he's not getting pushback for that decision.
That is
in an era,
bigoted against romantic comedies.
In an era when literally we're seeing, the destruction of our society because you don't have a father in the house. You're seeing families destroyed, right? I think you're seeing a lot of crime as a result of this. You're seeing lower test scores as a result of this, developmentally as a result of this. All of the research on this about having a unified family, right?
Well, even I was listening to a book this weekend called How to Raise an Adult, which is a great book for anybody who is a parent or, of any age children, and about how much parents do and don't empower their children. That's a tangent. What was I saying? Oh, so all of these parents call up the dean of Stanford, who wrote this book, and says, what can I do to get my kid in Stanford? How can I give them an advantage? Should they open a human trafficking, awareness business in Malawi or something right. Crazy stuff that 14-year-olds should not be focusing on at this point in their life. And the dean is like, stay together. That's really one of the biggest indicators of academic success, is coming from a two-parent family.
You can't talk about that.
Yeah.
See, you'll be, so Twitter freaks out, social media flips out at Candace Cameron for talking about family. I want to make movies about family. Look at this was like a Twitter response, like to, oh, Candace, homophobia is not a cute look. Traditional should not be synonymous with hate. And then, of course, all of the Twitter trolls just jumped on her for talking about family. And then, of course, in the trans community also, a lot of people were angered. And this Ms. Cracker, I didn't even know who Ms. Cracker is or was a finalist on RuPaul's drag show, also came out and then slammed this idea of traditional family. And I guess he's doing a one-person show in London called like Whose Holiday. Ms. Cracker has a new one-person show called Whose Holiday, where Ms. Cracker plays Cindy Lou Who from The Grinch. And in this version, Cindy Lou Who is an alcoholic, pill-popping, promiscuous woman. And it's all done to a Dr. Seuss rhyme. This is Ms. Cracker here on your screen. Cool. And Ms. Cracker was interviewed about like family movies, family, and says, I think any opportunity we have to kick down traditional family values is welcomed, Ms. Cracker says. The way of thinking about family is old and tired, and we need to reinvent it. So I think the Whose Holiday does that. It makes fun of family, and I think it talks about chosen family, talks about the friends that really matter, what it means to have them in your life. So yeah, F family, Ms. Cracker says.
Well, put that on the other foot. Like, imagine if Candace Cameron was like, F trans families, like what would be happening to her if she said those very words?
Of course. Good point. And I just want to say that 10-year-old Natalie was really jealous of Candace Cameron because she always had the perfect bangs and hair. And I was always like, in her wardrobe, she was it. And I was just super jealous. So I would otherwise be super motivated to not defend Candace Cameron. But all she said was, I like marriage and kids and I want to make movies about it. Literally, that's it.
But you can't say that now because you're seeing the media have been laying the groundwork for this. As an example, Time Magazine calling for the new American family. This is literally in Time Magazine, calling for the new America family, calling my brother's pregnancy in the making of a new American family.
And look, I understand that, people have hard relationships with their families and they need to recreate strong relationships outside of that unit. But if this is the main narrative, my problem is that it doesn't teach kids that they should even try to work things out with their family or try and hold stock in those relationships. Never mind the fact that having a strong connection to your family is associated with all manner of positive life outcomes. Health, wealth, longevity, grades,
happiness.
All of those things have a really strong connection to whether or not you have two-parent families and strong connections with both families. In fact, I remember when I was reading an early child psychology book that said that the number one predictor of success with girls is a strong relationship with the dad, which made me really depressed because I was like, what am I here? Like I nurse, I labor them, I do all the hard work. And then it's really just the dad that's the predictor of success because I'm the constant, right? The dad is the thing that puts them over and above. Yeah. As depressing as that is, two-parent families still hold their value, and not having that shakes up a child's world. And so this sort of movement to not acknowledge that and kick down anyone who does is just so interesting, and calling that hateful.
Well, it's ridiculous. And also then promoting this idea that, F the family, and instead it's better to be, an alcoholic, pill-popping, promiscuous. Like, what are you teaching like a young girl then? Like, that's how you're...
Or an old girl.
Like, that's how you're going to be a successful person. Just, F the family. Screw the family. You know what? Instead, just go out and become an alcoholic and pop pills and be promiscuous. And that's how you're going to be successful in life.
That seems like a lot of drama. I don't know about all that.
So I will not be going to see that one-person show.
Yes, but Judy Garland didn't want to be that way. That's the thing. This is like glorifying this.
Yeah. It's like, oh, this is fun. This is great. No more Hallmark Channel happy family stuff. Like, I mean, we need to get rid of this idea of the traditional American family, like according to Time Magazine. So let us know your thoughts on this. Again, we'll see what she does on her new channel with this Candace Cameron thing, but that's crazy. All you do is you say something about you want to do movies about traditional family and they jump on you now. Like what has happened?
Yeah. I mean, as an atheist, like the fact that she wants to do that does not bother me in the slightest. Go make your movies. I just don't have to watch them. Why do I have to like get involved in every discussion that everything that everybody wants to do and try to be a victim of it all the time?
Yeah,
you're saying that you're racist toward me, you're sexist toward me. Like, come on, like just let people have their thing and leave them alone.
I mean, the Wall Street Journal really did seem to take the piss out of her for all the Jesus that's on her Instagram and, you know, all the sort of sweet, you know, Christian Christmas. It's all very color coded. I mean, it's beautiful, her Instagram feed. It's like I've never stopped being jealous of her. That's the thing. And I'm not a Christian, but all of it looks so pretty. And she's got such a nice blowout. And when am I going to stop being jealous of her hair? I'm just wondering. Talk to someone else about that because you guys clearly. Did you not like DJ Tanner growing up?
I did.
No
but I was
opinion?
more into her brother. I was a Kirk Cameron fan. Family Ties.
Yeah, I had posters of Kirk Cameron on my wall. Like him, Sean Astin, and the Coreys.
Is it Ashton?
I think it's Sean Astin.
I thought it was
Aston.
Sean Astin.
Okay, I don't know.
You're thinking of Ashton Kutcher.
Maybe he was a baby. And the Coreys, Corey Haim and Corey Feldman.
Yeah.
I liked all of those teen bop boys. Really dating myself.
If you want to
here.
lose a lot of respect for Corey Feldman, go watch one of his live singing concerts.
I won't do that. He's just going to exist to me as if it's like that book we just read about young girls. Like he was like a media product that made like young girls' affections safe.
My sister had all that Full House stuff on the walls, and she was addicted to Full House, and so I saw that walking by all the time, but I didn't watch it. Yeah.
Anyway, okay.
You done?
I mean, I could go on about those bangs and the hair, but no, I won't.
We wrapped up the story, and she wanted to circle back and talk about Candace Cameron and DJ Tanner.
I mean, even still, now she's got a middle part.
Which is really odd. It's like the roles are reversed here tonight.
I know.
It's like usually she's like, come on, end it.
Yeah.
We're done. Okay, we're done.
No, then she can't yell at me later. She's like, I'm trying to go to sleep. You were talking about DJ Tanner. I can't, and who was the little kid in that where he was he'd say, "What you talking about, Willis?"
No, it was
House?
How rude, and it was the Mary Kate and Ashley, the Olsen twins.
The Olsen twins.
Yeah.
What you talking about,
Gary
Willis?
Coleman?
Right. Webster.
What's going on there?
I got like a hair. I don't know.
Okay, then we're gonna go now. Thank you for tuning in.
Hold on, we don't
want to hear you promote stuff.
Hey, I want to tell you about our newsletter.
Goodbye.
Nope. Sorry, DJ Tanner. Come on over to our website, Redacted.inc. Sign up for our free newsletter. It's totally free right there, Redacted.inc. And then, I got to tell you about the store because right before Christmas time, everything is discounted right now. So if you want to grab some Redacted merch, you can do that. It's discounted right now because we're basically selling this at cost. And through the end of the year, through the Christmas holiday right now. Redactedstore.com. You can grab a mug. You can grab a hoodie. One of the new hats just rolled out. We're working on stickers and we're working on laptop stickers and other things like that very, very soon. And you can grab it all right now. Deep discounts, redactedstore.com. Get these, and then those prices will go up after the new year because right now we're making $0 on this. So we're keeping it at cost through the manufacturer. So again, try to grab it. If you want a bottle, you want something special for the holidays, I can't wait to get my hoodie and my hat in the mail to be able to show it off here on the show. So thank you so much for supporting independent journalism and supporting what we do here, covering the stories the mainstream media will not. All right, everyone. Much love to all of you. We'll see you back here tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern time. What you talking about, Willis? Bye, everyone.
Are you worried about